roar of the ATV echoed across Marcus's pristine farmland as deep tire tracks carved through his carefully tended crops. 3 months of planning, thousands of dollars in seeds, gone in minutes of reckless joyriding. But when spoiled city girl Chelsea Hartwell laughed in his face and threatened to sue him for harassment, Marcus smiled quietly. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. Or that her daddy's money couldn't save her from the 100-pound razorback hogs that called his back 40 home. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way, and Chelsea was about to get an education that would cost her everything. Part 1. The destruction. Marcus Donovan stood at the edge of his cornfield, his weathered hands clenched into fists as he surveyed the devastation. Deep gouges carved through 6 acres of knee-high corn, the green stalks trampled and torn, lying twisted in the rich black earth like broken bones. 3 months of careful planning, $2,000 in premium seed. Countless hours of preparation, all destroyed in what couldn't have been more than 20 minutes of reckless abandon. The tire tracks told the story clearly. Someone had driven an ATV through his fence, tearing down 50 feet of wire and posts. Then gone on a joyride through his crops, carving donuts and figure eights with the gleeful abandon of a child with a new toy. The destruction was surgical in its completeness, as if someone had deliberately targeted the most promising section of his field. Son of a Marcus bit off the curse, his jaw working as he knelt to examine the damaged plants. Some might survive if he could get them upright quickly, but most were too badly damaged. The financial hit would be devastating, especially with the bank breathing down his neck about the farm loan. A distant rumble made him look up. Through the gap in his fence, he could see an ATV racing across the adjacent property, the sprawling Hartwell estate, with its manicured lawns and pristine horse pastures. The rider wore a pink helmet, long blonde hair streaming behind her, as she hit a jump and launched into the air with a whoop of pure joy. Chelsea Hartwell, of course. Marcus had been neighbors with the Hartwells for 15 years, ever since Jonathan Hartwell had bought the old Pritchard place and transformed it into a weekend retreat for his family. The tech mogul rarely visited, but his spoiled 22-year-old daughter treated the 1,000-acre property like her personal playground, throwing parties that lasted until dawn and generally acting like the world existed for her entertainment. The ATV roared closer, and Marcus could see Chelsea's face clearly, now flushed with excitement, a wide grin splitting her features as she gunned the engine. She caught sight of him standing in his ruined field and had the audacity to wave, as if they were old friends meeting for a pleasant chat. The machine skidded to a stop just inside his property line, engine idling with a throaty rumble. Chelsea pulled off her helmet, shaking out her perfectly styled hair, and Marcus felt his anger spike at her casual indifference to the destruction surrounding them. "Hey there, neighbor," she called out, her voice carrying the entitled cheerfulness of someone who'd never faced real consequences. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" Marcus walked toward her slowly, his boots crunching on broken cornstalks with each step. "Get off my land." Chelsea's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, come on, don't be such a grouch. I was just having a little fun." "Fun?" Marcus gestured at the devastation around them. "You call destroying 6 acres of crops fun?" She glanced around as if noticing the damage for the first time, though her tire tracks led directly through the worst of it. "It's just corn. Daddy says farmers get subsidies for everything anyway." The casual dismissal hit Marcus like a physical blow. Just corn. 3 generations of his family had worked this land, and this spoiled brat thought his livelihood was disposable entertainment. Just corn that feeds families, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Just corn that pays for my daughter's college tuition. Just corn that keeps this farm running. Chelsea rolled her eyes. Oh please, spare me the sob story. Everyone knows farmers are always whining about something. Bad weather, good weather, too much rain, not enough rain. Maybe if you people weren't so dependent on government handouts, get off my land. Each word came out like a gunshot. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Chelsea's face. But it was quickly replaced by the familiar armor of entitlement. You can't tell me what to do. My family has just as much right to be here as yours. Not on my property, you don't. Chelsea's expression hardened. Look, farmer boy, I don't know what your problem is, but you need to check your attitude. My father could buy and sell this whole county 10 times over. Your father's money won't grow back my crops. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you started harassing me. Chelsea pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. I'm texting my lawyer right now. Threatening behavior, intimidation. I'm sure I can think of a few more charges. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. Threatening behavior. You destroyed my property. Prove it, Chelsea said with a smirk. Besides, even if I did ride through your little vegetable patch, it was clearly an accident. These things happen when you live in the country. An accident. Marcus pointed at the deliberate figure-8 pattern carved into his field. Those look like accidents to you. Chelsea glanced at the obvious tire marks and shrugged. I was probably just trying to find my way back to the road. It's not my fault you don't have better signs posted. The sheer audacity of her lies left Marcus speechless for a moment. He pulled out his own phone, switching to the camera function. What are you doing? Chelsea demanded. Documenting the damage and recording this conversation. You can't record me without my permission. On my own property, I can do whatever I want. Just like you apparently think you can. Chelsea's face flushed red with anger. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. Good idea. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your tire tracks and your admission that you were riding through my property. I didn't admit anything, but Chelsea's voice had lost some of its confident edge. Marcus continued recording, panning across the destruction methodically. 6 acres of corn, premium seed variety, planted 3 months ago, destroyed by ATV tire tracks leading directly from the Hartwell property. Stop it. Chelsea gunned. Her engine, spraying dirt and broken corn stalks in Marcus's direction. You're going to regret this, farmer boy. My family doesn't forget people who cross us. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Chelsea slammed her helmet back on and roared. Away, leaving Marcus standing alone in his ruined field. He watched her disappear across the property line, then continued documenting the damage with methodical precision. Every destroyed plant, every torn fence post, every foot of ruined irrigation line. The insurance adjuster would need thorough documentation, though he suspected his policy wouldn't cover malicious destruction by wealthy neighbors. As he worked, Marcus felt a cold rage settling in his chest. Chelsea Hartwell thought she could destroy his livelihood and walk away with a smirk and a threat. She thought her daddy's money made her untouchable, that the rules didn't apply to people like her. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Marcus had grown up on this land, knew every acre like the back of his hand. He knew which areas were safe for recreational riding and which weren't. He knew about the old mine shafts hidden in the woods, the unstable creek banks that could swallow an ATV whole, and the section of his back 40 where he kept his prize-winning razorback hogs. Those hogs had cost him $15,000. Each, genetically superior animals bred for size and aggression. They were contained by electric fencing during the day, but at night, he let them roam free across 200 acres of woodland. Natural foragers, cleaning up fallen fruit, and keeping the underbrush manageable. They were also territorial, protective of their domain, and utterly fearless when confronted by intruders. Marcus smiled grimly as he surveyed his destroyed crops one final time. Chelsea Hartwell wanted to play games. Fine, but she was about to discover that some games had consequences she never imagined. The next phase of his plan would require careful timing and a few strategic modifications to his property. Nothing illegal, nothing that could be traced back to him. Just a few subtle changes that would ensure Chelsea's next joyride took her somewhere she'd never forget. As he walked back toward his farmhouse, Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number for Tom Bradley, his neighbor to the east who raised hunting dogs. Tom owed him a favor from last spring when Marcus had helped repair his kennel after a storm. It was time to collect on that debt. "Tom, it's Marcus. I need your help with a little pest control problem." Behind him, the wind rustled through the broken corn stalks, carrying the faint sound of an ATV engine in the distance. Chelsea was still out there, probably bragging to her friends about putting the local farmer in his place. She had no idea that her reign of entitled destruction was about to come to a very messy end. 3 days later, Marcus stood in his workshop at dawn, carefully adjusting the final components of his plan. The modified trail signs looked authentic enough. Weathered wood with faded paint that matched the existing markers scattered throughout the county's network of recreational trails. To any casual observer, they would appear to be legitimate directional signs guiding ATV riders through safe, approved routes. The reality was far more sinister. Tom Bradley had come through as promised, lending Marcus his pack of retired hunting hounds for the week. The dogs were well-trained and obedient, but more importantly, they carried the scent markers that would be crucial to the next phase. Marcus had spent the previous evening walking them through specific sections of his property, letting them mark trees and bushes along a carefully planned route. That route led directly to the back 40, where his razorback hogs had been increasingly agitated since he'd started supplementing their diet with extra protein. The massive boars now weighed close to 400 pounds each, their tusks razor-sharp, and their tempers volatile. Under normal circumstances, they avoided human contact, but hunger and territorial instincts could change that equation quickly. Marcus loaded the fake trail signs into his truck and drove to the border between his property and the Hartwell estate. The original fence was still damaged from Chelsea's joyride, creating a natural entry point that any thrill-seeking ATV rider would find irresistible. He positioned the first sign just inside the gap, its arrow pointing toward what appeared to be an exciting trail system winding through dense woods. The sign read, "Extreme Trail Expert Riders, only 5 miles of pure adrenaline." 20 yards down the false trail, he installed the second sign, "Caution, wildlife area, proceed at your own risk." It wasn't technically a lie. There was definitely wildlife in the area. As Marcus hammered the final sign into place, his phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at the screen and felt his jaw tighten. The message was from an unknown number, but the content made the sender clear. "Hope you learned your lesson, farmer boy. Stay out of my way, or next time will be worse." Marcus stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Chelsea's arrogance was about to become her greatest weakness. The sound of an approaching engine made him look up. A county sheriff's patrol car was bumping along the dirt road that bordered his property, and Marcus felt a momentary spike of concern. Had Chelsea actually followed through on her threat to involve law enforcement? The cruiser stopped, and Deputy Rick Hawkins climbed out. Marcus relaxed slightly. Rick was a good man, someone who understood the challenges facing local farmers. They'd gone to high school together, back when the county still had a functioning agricultural economy. "Morning, Marcus," Rick called out, adjusting his hat against the morning sun. "Got a complaint about some kind of dispute with the Hartwell girl. Thought I'd stop by and hear your side of things." Marcus gestured toward his ruined cornfield. "She tore through 6 acres with her ATV 3 days ago. Destroyed about $8,000 worth of crops." Rick whistled low, surveying the damage. "That's a hell of a mess. You got any proof it was her?" "Tire tracks lead straight from her property to mine." Marcus showed Rick his phone, scrolling through the photos he'd taken. "Plus, she admitted it when I confronted her about it. She said you threatened her. I told her to get off my land. Apparently that qualifies as threatening behavior in her world." Rick chuckled grimly. "Yeah, these rich city folks have a different definition of threatening than we do. What are you planning to do about it?" Marcus shrugged, hoping his expression remained neutral. "File an insurance claim, I guess. Try to salvage what I can of the crop. You could press charges for destruction of property. Could I? Her daddy's got more lawyers than I've got dollars. Probably end up costing me more in legal fees than the crops were worth." Rick nodded, understanding. It was an old story in their county, wealthy outsiders buying up property and thinking local laws didn't apply to them. "Well, if she gives you any more trouble, you call me directly. Don't let her intimidate you." "I won't." After Rick left, Marcus finished installing his trail signs and returned to the house to wait. He didn't have to wait long. Chelsea's ATV roared to life around noon, the sound carrying clearly across the property line. Marcus watched from his kitchen window as she emerged from the Hartwell garage, this time wearing a tight black riding outfit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. She paused at the edge of her property, talking on her phone, and laughing at something the caller said. Then she spotted the gap in Marcus's fence and the new trail sign beyond it. Even from a distance, Marcus could see her interest spike. She ended her phone call and rode closer to investigate, stopping just short of his property line to read the sign more carefully. "Extreme Trail," she read aloud, her voice carrying on the still air. "Expert riders only." Chelsea gunned her engine and shot through the gap without hesitation, following the arrow toward what she believed was an exciting new challenge. Marcus smiled grimly as he watched her disappear into the trees, following his carefully planned route deeper into the woods. Phase 1 was complete. Marcus grabbed his rifle and headed out on foot, taking a parallel path that would keep him well clear of Chelsea's route while allowing him to monitor her progress. He wasn't planning to hurt her. The gun was purely for protection, in case his plan worked too well and the hogs became a problem for him as well. The trail he'd created was deviously simple. It started as a legitimate-looking ATV path, wide enough for easy riding and free of obvious obstacles. But it gradually narrowed as it wound deeper into the woods, forcing the rider to commit to the route or face an increasingly difficult turnaround. Marcus had walked this path dozens of times over the past 3 days, memorizing every turn and hazard. He knew exactly where Chelsea would be at any given moment, and more importantly, he knew where she was heading. The sound of her engine grew more distant as she followed the false trail deeper into his property. Occasionally he caught glimpses of Pink Helmet through the trees, always moving in the direction he'd planned. 20 minutes into her ride, Chelsea hit the first real obstacle, steep downhill section that ended in a narrow creek crossing. The trail continued on the other side, but the crossing itself was treacherous, with loose rocks and slippery mud that could easily trap an ATV. Marcus positioned himself on a ridge overlooking the creek and watched through binoculars as Chelsea approached the crossing. She hesitated for a moment, studying the terrain, then backed up to get a running start. The ATV hit the water at full speed, sending up a massive spray as it bounced and skidded across the rocky bottom. For a moment it looked like she might make it cleanly across, but the rear wheels found a hidden soft spot and began to sink. Chelsea gunned the engine, trying to power through, but only succeeded in digging herself deeper. The ATV lurched sideways and died, its engine flooded and useless. "Shit," Chelsea's voice echoed off the trees as she surveyed her situation. The machine was stuck hub-deep in creek mud, and no amount of pushing or pulling was going to free it without mechanical assistance. She pulled out her phone, but Marcus had done his homework. This section of the woods was in a dead zone for cell service, a natural feature he'd confirmed during his reconnaissance. Chelsea tried calling several times, growing more frustrated with each failed attempt. Finally, she threw the phone back in her pack and looked around, as if noticing her surroundings for the first time. The false trail continued on the far side of the creek, marked by another of Marcus's signs. "Extreme trail continues to miles to scenic overlook." It was a lie, of course. The trail led nowhere, except deeper into the woods, eventually terminating at the electric fence that contained his razorback hogs during daylight hours. But by the time Chelsea realized the deception, she would be miles from help with darkness approaching, and some very hungry, very territorial animals for company. Chelsea studied the sign for a long moment, then looked back at her stuck ATV. She was facing a choice: abandon the expensive machine and try to hike back the way she'd come, or continue forward on foot in hopes of finding help at the promised scenic overlook. Her pride made the decision for her. Chelsea grabbed a small backpack from the ATV's storage compartment and began wading across the creek. The water was deeper than it looked, coming up to her thighs and soaking her expensive riding boots. She cursed creatively as she struggled through the mud, finally hauling herself up the far bank with her clothes dripping and her perfectly styled hair plastered to her skull. Marcus smiled as he watched her start down the continuation of his false trail. She was committed now, following his carefully laid breadcrumbs deeper into the woods with each step. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus shadowed her progress from a safe distance. The trail continued to narrow and become more difficult, forcing Chelsea to climb over fallen logs and push through thick underbrush. Her expensive riding outfit was torn and dirty, her manicured nails broken from scrambling over obstacles. But she pressed on, driven by the same entitled determination that had led her to destroy his crops in the first place. The idea that she might be lost or in danger simply didn't compute in her privileged woe. Chelsea stared at the electric fence in growing panic, her breath coming in short gasps as the reality of her situation finally sank in. The promised scenic overlook was a lie. The expert trail was a trap. And she was alone in the wilderness, with darkness falling fast. One of the massive boars lifted its head from its foraging, small black eyes fixing on her with predatory interest. Even from 30 feet away, she could see its enormous tusks and the ridge of coarse hair running down its muscled back. The animal had to weigh at least 400 pounds, all of it muscle and bad temper. Okay, she whispered to herself, backing slowly away from the fence. This is fine. I just need to go back the way I came, and a branch snapped behind her. Chelsea spun around to find Marcus Donovan emerging from the tree line, his hunting rifle cradled casually in his arms. He wasn't pointing it at her, but the message was clear enough. Enjoying your ride, Miss Hartwell. Chelsea's fear transformed instantly into rage. You did this. You led me out here deliberately. I didn't lead you anywhere, Marcus replied calmly. You chose to trespass on my property. You chose to follow an unmarked trail. You chose to abandon your vehicle and continue on foot. I'd say you led yourself here. This is kidnapping. False imprisonment. Chelsea's voice cracked with hysteria. My father will have you arrested. He'll destroy you. Marcus gestured toward the hog pen with his rifle barrel. Your father's not here. It's just you, me, and about 20 very hungry razorback hogs who haven't been fed in 2 days. The boars had noticed the commotion and were gathering near the fence, their intelligent eyes tracking the humans' movements. One particularly large male snorted and pawed the ground, its tusks scraping against a fence post. You're insane, Chelsea breathed. You can't do this. Do what? I'm just a farmer checking on his livestock. You're the one who got lost on my property. Nobody will believe that, won't they? Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. According to my GPS tracking app, you've been riding illegally on private property for over 3 hours. Started on the Hartwell estate, cut through my damaged fence, and ended up here. Looks like a spoiled rich girl who bit off more than she could chew. Chelsea's eyes darted frantically between Marcus and the fence. The boars were becoming more agitated, sensing the tension and excitement in the air. Their grunting and snorting grew louder, punctuated by the occasional squeal. What do you want? She asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I want you to understand consequences, Marcus said. Your whole life, you've done whatever you wanted and let Daddy's money clean up the mess, destroyed my crops. No problem. Just threatened to sue me. Stuck your ATV in my creek. Someone else will deal with it. But out here, money doesn't matter. Power doesn't matter. There's just you and the choices you've made. As if responding to his words, the electric fence began to hum. The timer Marcus had set that morning was kicking in, switching the system from its daytime containment mode to the nighttime free range setting. In 60 seconds, the fence would power down and the hogs would be released to roam across 200 acres of woodland, including the clearing where Chelsea stood. Please, Chelsea said, her arrogance finally cracking completely. I'm sorry about your crops. I'll pay for them. I'll pay double, triple whatever they were worth. $8,000, Marcus said quietly. Done. I'll transfer the money right now. Chelsea fumbled for her phone, forgetting that she had no signal. Plus the fence repairs. $2,000. Yes, fine, whatever you want. Plus pain and suffering for the threats and harassment. Call it another $10,000. Chelsea's face went pale. $20,000 total. That's robbery. No, Marcus said, watching the fence timer count down. Robbery is what you did to me. This is justice. The electric fence hummed once more, then went silent. On the other side, the massive boars lifted their heads as they sensed the change. The dominant male approached the fence line cautiously, then pushed against it with his snout. When no shock came, he grunted satisfaction and began working his way through the gate that Marcus had left deliberately unlatched. Oh God, Chelsea whispered as the first boar squeezed through the opening. Oh God, oh God, oh God, ... The animal was even more massive up close, its tusks gleaming wickedly in the fading light. It studied Chelsea with intelligent eyes, then let out a low grunt that brought 2 more boars through the gate. "They're not necessarily aggressive toward humans," Marcus said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "But they are territorial. And they don't like sudden movements or loud noises. If you stay very still and very quiet, you might be okay." Chelsea whimpered as more hogs emerged from the pen, spreading out across the clearing with the practiced efficiency of apex predators. They moved with surprising grace for such large animals, their small eyes constantly scanning for threats or opportunities. "Of course," Marcus continued, "they also haven't been fed in 2 days. I've been saving their dinner until after dark. They're probably pretty hungry by now." "Please," Chelsea begged, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do anything. I'll pay whatever you want. You already agreed to 20,000, but I want something else too." "What?" Marcus smiled coldly. "I want you to understand what it feels like to be helpless. To have someone more powerful than you decide your fate without caring about your feelings or your rights. To know that all your money and connections and threats mean absolutely nothing." The lead boar had worked its way to within 10 feet of Chelsea, its massive head swaying as it tested the air. The animal could smell her fear, and Marcus could see its predatory instincts beginning to sharpen. "Last chance," he said. $20,000, plus a written apology that I can show to anyone who asks why you won't be riding your ATV on my property anymore, and you never set foot on my land again." "Yes," Chelsea sobbed. "Yes, I agree, just get me out of here." Marcus waited a moment longer, letting her feel the full weight of her helplessness as the hogs continued to circle closer. Then he raised his rifle and fired a single shot into the air. The crack of the gunshot sent the boars scattering back toward their pen, their survival instincts overriding their curiosity. Marcus worked the bolt and chambered another round, keeping the rifle ready as he moved toward Chelsea. "Stay behind me," he ordered. "Move slowly and don't make any sudden noises." Chelsea nodded frantically, pressing close to his back as they began moving toward the tree line. The boars watched from a distance, still agitated but no longer approaching. Marcus kept the rifle ready, knowing that one wrong move could turn their retreat into a nightmare. They made it to the woods without incident, but Marcus could hear the hogs beginning to spread out again behind them. The animals would roam free until dawn, and anyone caught in the open would be in serious danger. "The trail back to your ATV is marked with reflective tape," Marcus said as they reached the edge of the clearing. "Follow it exactly, and don't deviate. If you get lost out here in the dark with the hogs running free, ... He didn't need to finish the threat. Chelsea nodded again, her face streaked with tears and dirt. $20,000, Marcus repeated. "In my account by tomorrow morning. And the written apology. I'll do it. I swear, I'll do it." Marcus handed her a flashlight from his pack. "Better get moving. You've got about 2 miles of rough terrain ahead of you, and I'm not coming to rescue you if you get lost again." Chelsea grabbed the flashlight with shaking hands and plunged into the woods. Following the reflective markers that would lead her back to her stuck ATV, Marcus listened to her crashing through the underbrush for several minutes before the sound faded into the distance. He smiled grimly as he shouldered his rifle and began walking back toward his farmhouse. Chelsea Hartwell had learned a lesson tonight that no amount of money could have taught her. For the first time in her spoiled life, she'd faced real consequences for her actions. and she'd discovered just how fragile her sense of invincibility really was. The next morning, Marcus found $20,000 deposited in his bank account, along with a hand-delivered letter that read, "I sincerely apologize for the damage I caused to your property. It was wrong and irresponsible, and I take full responsibility for my actions. I will never trespass on your land again, and I deeply regret any inconvenience I may have caused you and your family." Chelsea Hartwell Marcus folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk drawer. Then he walked out to survey his cornfield, where new green shoots were already beginning to emerge from the damaged plants he'd managed to save. In the distance, he could see the Hartwell estate, but there was no sound of ATV engines, no roar of entitled recreation disturbing the morning peace. Chelsea's machine was still stuck in his creek, and based on the silence from next door, it was likely to stay there for a very long time. Justice, Marcus reflected, sometimes came in unexpected forms. But when it finally arrived, it was always worth the wait. Part 3. Hog Heaven. 6 weeks had passed since Chelsea's night of terror in the woods, and Marcus thought the nightmare was finally over. The $20,000 had helped him replant his damaged crops and repair his fences. The written apology sat framed on his desk, a tangible reminder that even the privileged could be taught humility. But he should have known better.